In a room filled with cameras, one of Congress's loudest voices suddenly had nothing left to say. The lights above the hearing table burned hotter than usual, reflecting off the polished wood and the sweat on Jim Jordan's brow. Reporters leaned forward in their seats, pens frozen mid-air, waiting for the explosion that had always come so easily from him. But this time, it didn't come. Across the table, Jasmine Crockett sat steady and unflinching. Her eyes didn't waver. She had asked her question once, simple, direct, grounded in law, and now she waited. No interruption, no scramble for attention, no theatrics. Just silence, pressing down on the room like a weight. Jordan shifted in his chair, reaching for his notes, but found no answer hiding there. His voice, usually sharp and booming, faltered into fragments. The silence only grew heavier. Cameras zoomed in. Millions watching at home leaned closer to their screens. In that instant, the roles reversed. The man who had built his brand on relentless attack stood cornered. The woman they underestimated commanded the room with nothing but her, calm, and what Jasmine Crockett said next left Jim Jordan with no escape. The moment wasn't happening in some quiet committee room, tucked away from public view. This was a nationally televised hearing, the kind that lives on screens long after the gavel falls. Every question, every pause, every flicker of expression was broadcast to millions. For Jim Jordan, this was familiar territory. He thrived on volume, on turning the spotlight into a stage, on drowning out substance with sound. He had done it before, and he believed he could do it again. But this time, his opponent was not another shouting match partner. Jasmine Crockett didn't need to raise her voice. She came armed with precision, not performance. Where Jordan was restless and reactive, she was still, composed, razor-sharp. Her calm was not weakness, it was control. The stakes stretched far, beyond a personal clash. This was about the credibility of Congress itself. Could America's lawmakers still be trusted to uphold the rule of law? Could truth hold its ground in an era when volume often masquerades as victory? Watching at home were immigrants who saw in Crockett's presence a reflection of resilience. Families who had sacrificed everything for the promise that facts, not fury, would shape their children's future. Each second of Jordan's hesitation was more than a stumble. It was a revelation. A symbol of what happens when bluster meets preparation, when noise confronts knowledge. The hearing had become more than oversight. It had become a battle over who would define the American narrative, those who distort it, or those who defend. And Jasmine Crockett, seated with quiet fire in her eyes, made it clear without saying a word. She wasn't here to play Jordan's game. She was here to rewrite the rules. Jim Jordan built his reputation not on answers, but on volume. He was the congressman who turned hearings into spectacles, treating oversight like a wrestling ring, where the loudest man claimed victory. Cameras loved him because he was combative, relentless, always ready with a soundbite that played well on cable news. To his supporters, he was a warrior. To his critics, a showman in a suit. He styled himself as the champion of law and order, forever invoking the Constitution, forever demanding accountability. Yet when it came to the details of the very laws he swore to defend, Jordan often danced around the facts. Ask him for clarity and he offered deflection. Ask him for proof and he offered performance. His power was not in knowledge, but in noise. Behind the chest-thumping and finger-pointing was a hollow center, a man more invested in headlines than hard truths, more interested in sparring than in solving. For years it worked. He thrived in chaos because chaos blurred the absence of substance. But the stage lights can be cruel. They don't just magnify strength, they expose weakness. And for Jim Jordan, one truth was about to become undeniable. When the shouting stopped, so did his answers. Jasmine Crockett did not walk into Congress as a performer chasing headlines. She arrived as a lawyer who had built her career in the trenches of justice, defending the voiceless, advocating for those America too often ignores. In Texas courtrooms, she fought for clients who couldn't afford to be heard, standing up, against a system that worked faster for the powerful than for the poor. Every case sharpened her instincts, every battle deepened her resolve. Her reputation grew quickly, sharp, fearless, unflappable. She wasn't the type to be baited into shouting matches, nor was she the type to shrink from confrontation. Crockett understood something too many in Washington forget. The law isn't an abstract talking point. It is the difference between survival and collapse, between dignity and despair. She knew the law not as a slogan, but as a lifeline. She carried that truth with her into Congress, where she became a voice for communities who had long felt invisible. A daughter of Texas, she represented not only her district, But the idea that integrity could still stand tall in a chamber too often consumed by theatrics. Calm when others raged, steady when others spun out. She exuded a presence that demanded respect. Her opponents underestimated her, mistaking poise for passivity. They mistook her quiet confidence for silence. But Crockett knew when to wait, when to listen, and when to strike with precision that left no room for retreat. And as she faced Jim Jordan across that hearing room, every hour of courtroom battle, every late night preparing briefs, every lesson in standing firm against injustice rose to the surface. That lifetime of preparation was about to collide with Jim Jordan's weakest moment. The air in the hearing room shifted as the exchanges grew sharper. Jim Jordan leaned forward, cutting across Crockett mid-sentence, his voice rising with the familiar rhythm of interruption. He waved his hands, dismissed her points with a smirk, and tried to bury her in the same storm of noise that had silenced so many before. Theatrics had always been his shield, but Jasmine Crockett refused to be moved. She didn't flinch, didn't snap back, didn't allow his interruptions to break her stride. Instead, she repeated her legal question, calm, precise, unshaken. Each repetition tightened the noose of accountability. She wasn't arguing. She was building a record brick by brick, knowing the weight of the law was behind her words. Jordan's volume climbed as his confidence shrank. His face flushed, his voice cracked, his rhythm stumbled. He dodged, he deflected, he tried to redirect. But every time Crockett's voice brought him back to the same point, the one truth he could not escape. Reporters exchanged glances. The audience leaned in. Even Jordan's allies shifted uneasily in their seats. The louder he grew, the clearer it became. Power was slipping from his grasp. And then came the question he couldn't outrun. Crockett leaned forward, her voice steady as stone, and delivered, the strike. It wasn't a rant, it wasn't a performance. It was a question so precise, so rooted in law, that there was no way around it. The kind of question every lawyer knows is a trap for the unprepared. She asked it once, slowly, deliberately, and then let the silence take over. The room froze. Eyes shifted from her to Jordan. Cameras zoomed, capturing every twitch of his face, every bead of sweat gathering at his temple. For the first time, Jim Jordan, the man who thrived on volume, was speechless. He opened his mouth, searching for words, but found none. What came out was half-formed, a stammer that only confirmed what everyone now saw. He didn't know. A ripple of muffled laughter cut through the chamber, followed by gasps as the weight of the moment sank in. Staffers avoided eye contact. Reporters scribbled furiously. The performance politician, stripped of his script, had nowhere left to turn. His bluster had collapsed under the weight of Crockett's composure, and in that instant, the destroyer of debates was himself destroyed. The hearing room moment didn't stay in Washington. It detonated across the country. Within minutes, clips of Jim Jordan's collapse and Jasmine Crockett's unflinching precision flooded social media. Hashtags lit up timelines. Ja Crockett owned Jordan, Jaf legal beatdown, each one spreading like wildfire. Millions of views stacked up overnight, each replay etching the humiliation deeper. Commentators seized the symbolism. On cable panels, analysts framed it as more than a clash between two members of Congress. It was law versus noise, calm versus chaos. Crockett's measured tone became a rallying point, her words replayed with admiration, her composure dissected like a masterclass in accountability. Late-night hosts turned Jordan's silence into punchlines. Memes painted him as a wrestler, pinned in his own ring. While Crockett was crowned the unlikely champion who had flipped the script, allies flooded her feeds with praise, hailing her as the kind of representative America needed more of, fearless, principled, unshaken. From Jordan's camp, an awkward silence, no fiery rebuttals, no spin that could erase the images seared into the public's mind. For once, the man who had built a career on dominating the spotlight found himself eclipsed, and the world wanted to know, what would this mean for him next? In the days that followed, Crockett made it clear that the moment wasn't about personal victory. This isn't about me versus Jim Jordan, she said, her voice carrying the same steadiness that had silenced the room. This is about facts versus fiction, truth versus performance. She refused to let the exchange be reduced to a viral skirmish. For her, it was a demonstration of something deeper, the endurance of dignity in the face of arrogance. The lesson resonated. Viewers saw more than a takedown. They saw a reminder that preparation defeats bluster, that calm can dismantle chaos, that integrity doesn't need theatrics to prevail. Crockett's composure became a symbol of what leadership ought to look Like not the loudest voice, but the clearest one. In a political era saturated with shouting matches, her quiet strength echoed louder than Jordan's volume ever had. It was proof that the fight for truth is never won by noise. It is won by those who carry the law as a shield for the vulnerable. Because in America, the law doesn't bow to the loudest voice, it bends toward justice. And Jasmine Crockett had just reminded the nation of that eternal truth. Jasmine Crockett destroyed Jim Jordan that day, not with volume, not with theatrics, but with truth. In a chamber too often drowned by noise, she proved that composure and clarity could still cut through. What unfolded was more than a viral exchange. It was a reminder that when arrogance collapses, dignity rises. The real victory wasn't in a soundbite. It wasn't in the trending hashtags or the late-night monologues. It was in showing the country that integrity still has a place in politics, that facts still matter, and that leaders who stand on principle can still command the room without raising their voice. Crockett's calm dismantling of Jordan was a victory for every person who has ever been told to stay quiet, to sit down, to accept the noise of power as unavoidable. And now, it's your turn. If you believe truth still matters, share this moment. Let it echo further than the chamber walls, further than one hearing, further than one news cycle. Subscribe, join this movement, and add your voice to the chorus that says, dignity must always triumph over arrogance. Because the fight isn't over, and the next battle may already be here.